What is up, guys? Welcome back to Volume 4. I'm looking forward to the day where I no longer have enough fingers. Maybe I'll take off my shoes and do my toes as well, too. Volume 20, and then people will leave. Volume 4 of a Q&A. If you guys are new here, how I do these is ask your questions down below in the comments section, and then based off of which questions get the most little thumbs up, those are the ones that I'm going to answer. So if you have a question that you want answered, hit it down below and then have a look through the comments down there. If you see another question and you're like, ooh, that sounds good, I want to know what that's all about, boop, hit that little thumbs up, make that noise, boop, and maybe I will answer y'all's question the next go around. So coming into this Q&A, I had some very good questions. I had to think about a lot of these. Hopefully I think about all of them most of the time, but I really had to think on some of these. So kudos to you guys. Good job. You had some good questions this go, so let's crack right on into it. So someone has a quote from, I don't know what they're saying here. So you guys know I'm reading your guys' questions right here as I go through. I'm not texting my mom. I am texting my mom too. Mom, what's for dinner? She said meatloaf.
Ma, the meatloaf!
I'll invite you guys over for meatloaf later. But if you guys, one thing I'm going to say is a little disclaimer before I answer this question. I'm going to answer this with this person's name because it's nothing negative. If you guys want me to answer questions about people and you say, hey, what do you think about this guy? I will not answer it. If you have a specific question about someone that's not negative or whatever, and it's not super general, said, hey, this person said this, it's not a bad thing, then maybe I'll answer it. But if you have something about someone's training that you're curious about, ask about that thing, not that person. So if someone really promotes this specific thing, don't say, hey, what do you think about so-and-so, and want me to discuss them as an entire human being, apparently, and everything about them. Say the specific thing, don't say their name, and maybe I'll actually answer it there. But this isn't a negative thing. Someone just quotes basically Greg Doucette or whatever, says something about the secret to gaining is doing more than you did last time. And then basically goes on, what do I like to do more of? Do I like to do more sets, more weight, more reps, more exercises? What's my preferred method for progressive overload of an exercise? So good question. And I had another question about this. I'm going to kind of tie in the two because I had a question with this one specifically, what's my preferred progression? And I think the next question right after this, that was also one of the most popular, was how do I progress basically week to week? Like what's my typical rep range? I'll get to that question too, but this is going to be a 2-question kind of answered first part here. So bear with me. So the thing that I look at, I'll start with some silly analogies because that's how my dumb brain works, is with analogies. And I like to think of, well, what's the first thing as far as what do we need to actually grow muscle? You know, so there's this whole recovery thing that I won't touch. Assuming your recovery is good, what is the thing that we need to grow muscle? You know, it is intramuscular force is the thing, and then we need it for some dose. So I always say with like a medication, you have some ailment, you need to be fixed. There's an appropriate medication and there's an appropriate dose to have the best effect. Arguably, both should be right, but I would say the type of medication is more important than the dose, and everyone gets kind of caught up on the dose part. So I say the most important thing first and foremost is to make sure you're taking the right medication, which is that you're prioritizing slowly progressing intramuscular force demands over time. And that sounds nerdy because I said intramuscular and force and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to kind of break that down to what that looks like. And then from there, as far as the dose is concerned, I'm not going to go into volume a whole lot because I really think the things that I'll touch on that is I think volume, the dose that you need, the amount of volume that you need to progress is somewhat individual dependent. One thing I know for sure is that has a point of diminishing returns. It has a point to where it's not realistic anymore, right? Like obviously if volume was the most important thing, you know, in day one you went to a gym and all it took was one set of an exercise and you're good. And you wanted to progress to, you know, a month from now, 2 sets, a month from there, 3 sets, a month from there, 4 sets. You know, no one wants to be in the gym 10 years down the road doing 1,200 sets. Don't check the math on that. It's not right. But at some point in time, obviously, just progressing volume alone is not going to do it. Progressing the dose is not as important as actually making sure that the medication is right. And so basically, whatever amount of intramuscular force that works at some point in time, you need that amount to progress over time. So what's the best way to go about that? So first, figure out volume on your own. I always like to say, if you want my thoughts on volume when I'm working with an individual, and that's why this stuff I think is some of the most useless stuff people debate to no end online, is how much volume should you do, how many working sets, blah, 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 blah. These are questions from people that either, one, are not currently producing results themselves because they're focused on the wrong things, people that probably haven't coached a whole lot of people, maybe, because again, of all the stuff that's really hard to actually help people produce results, volume's the easiest thing ever, right? It's just a number on paper. Is it 3 sets or is it 4? Is it 4 sets or is it 5? Is it 10 sets or is it 20? I literally just gave you the golden keys there. There's no mystery there. There's no education required there. There's no challenge or work ethic involved there. It's just a number. It's what you're doing of that number and everything that's so much more important. So my approach always with volume is You can write this down: as little as possible to produce maximal results. I'll repeat it: as little as possible to produce maximal results. I know some people look for maximal recoverable volume. I'm looking for the least we can possibly do where I can actually show progress is occurring. One, from session to session, but then two, most importantly, is your physique actually changing? Are you putting on lean tissue? Are pictures progressing? Is the scale going up? You're not getting fat, etc. What's the reason for that? More than anything else, in the hypertrophy or muscle building world, I think volume is the most taxing on recovery. So I always want to keep my demands on recovery as low as possible. And again, by keeping volume as low as possible. Also, long term, just under the assumption, which is an assumption, it's 100% accurate, no one in the gym does anything perfect. And so if you're doing something wrong at all, whether that's a lot of things wrong, some little things wrong, I think volume has the biggest tax on orthopedic toll, right? Assuming you're doing something wrong. So again, considering the fact, like, yes, there's this notion of if I do things perfect or with perfect form or whatever, could I limit orthopedic issues? Of course, you should strive for good form. But no one has it. And so if whatever you're doing is going to cause some sort of orthopedic issue, if I do half the volume or twice as much volume, you're going to wear out that orthopedic stuff twice as fast, in my opinion, doing a higher level of volume. So for me, as little as possible to produce progress is a good idea just for short-term recovery. For me, it's a good idea for long-term orthopedic health. And then also, if someone actually does need more volume, you actually have somewhere to go. Like if you start from day one and you just start progressing volume up, you're going to run out of places to go really fast. Where if I actually push some human being through the first 10 years of their training to where they're legit, maybe intermediate, advanced level, and I find out we're having a tough time progressing with this minimal amount of volume, guess what? The secret is one more, right? It's like, oh, there's no mystery there if they're doing X amount of working sets. And I say, all right, well, let's see what happens if we add one more working set this workout. And then we add one more working set. Like, most people aren't doing anything remotely accurate enough to really know if volume makes a difference. But if you're keeping this fixed minimal amount that you're trying to progress over a long period of time, and you feel like you've maxed out variables, then it's easy to add one more, see what happens. Then one more, see what happens. And over time, maybe you find, hey, if I progressed up my total volume over the course of the week 20%, all of a sudden I'm making faster progress. Great. Then you need a little bit more volume, and it's not very mysterious. So I want to do things, and let me add one asterisk to this too. Some of these questions will be quicker, I promise. This is the long one, but I think it's an important one, so that's why I'm rambling. I'm not implying that people that progress volume over time are doing anything wrong either. This really comes down to, what does a coach find produces the best results? And progressing anything is good. Most people just go into the gym and they do nothing. And I'm also summarizing for some people out there that are thinking, oh, he's saying something negative about this coach or that coach. I'm not saying anything negative about any coach. I'm inaccurately summarizing what other coaches do. Some people have very good structures of, let's taper volume up and then back down. Let's taper volume up, back down, while they're doing things, progressing form, progressing load as well too. So again, just because I'm saying my main focus isn't progressing volume, I'm not saying that other people that don't have an intelligent, structured approach to progressing volume are doing things wrong either. That's not what I'm implying at all. So there are a ton of people out there that have an intelligent, structured approach to progressing volume over time. They undulate it. They do different things for macro and mesocycles and blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. Micro, macro, meso, all the whatever sounds cool for periodization. That's great. If you have a plan, you're progressing something, you're doing better than 95% of people. I'm just kind of giving my preferred answer on this one. So what do I think is the biggest opportunity? So if you're sitting at home right now and I say, what's your favorite chest exercise? And hopefully it's something I feel in my chest. When I do it and I progress on it, I feel like my chest gets bigger. It doesn't bother my joints. There you go. Let's take that exercise. Let's say right now hypothetically, it's some sort of dumbbell press. You're doing 50-pound dumbbells for 10 reps. Your form's 6 out of 10. For my opinion, the first huge opportunity for progressive overload is always execution. Now, again, this is just for the average person. If you're someone watching this and your form is hypothetically a 9.5 out of 10, and you do things like a robot, you feel things great, no joint issues, whatever, then that's not your biggest opportunity for progression. But most people, you're watching this, your form's a 6 out of 10, it's okay. If you improve form, i.e. use the trained muscle more, use it for more of the range of motion, limit other muscles' involvements, limit momentum, limit cheating, that will translate to more intramuscular force. It will also translate to a larger volume of intramuscular force. People don't think about that. I'm going to link in here. I have a video called the Circle Rep Principle right up here. It's linked up here. Trevor did a good job. It's right up there. Click on it. And I think that's a really, really important one for people to watch. Because most people just think of volume, like I said, of numbers of reps and sets and this and that. Where again, if you really look at my thought process, when I look at what is one rep, no one defines the volume of one rep. And someone in a gym can literally have a tenth of the volume in one rep that someone else has of one rep. Let that sink in. I'm not kidding. A tenth. I've seen some people where the trained muscle, the targeted trained muscle, is doing nothing. There's a whole lot of momentum. There's a whole lot of swinging. There's a whole lot of jerking stuff around. And then I've seen people at the elite level that are massive, strong, and have robot good form. And again, what they're doing with a rep isn't even in the same ballpark, isn't even in the same league as what some people are doing in the gym. So if you do that properly, that is the first way to maximize intramuscular force and maximize the volume that you're getting out of one rep. Because again, if you don't say what is the volume of one rep, then adding up what is the volume of a given set, people are like, how many reps should I do? How many sets should I do? And it's like, well, you haven't defined one rep. What the hell is the point of adding up all this random stuff after that? So if you improve the quality of one rep first, meaning improve form, you're going to increase the amount of intramuscular force that you have, and you're also going to increase the total volume that you're going to have within that rep, and then in turn within that set and within those total sets from there as well too. From there, if you take your hypothetical form that we started with from 6 out of 10 at home to a 9.5 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, and then you're doing what I say 50 pounds for 10, if eventually you're doing it with 9 out of 10 form, 10 out of 10 form, and you're doing it with 150 pounds for 10, then you're going to be huge. There's pretty much no way around it. You're going to be huge. And so that's my preferred method of progression, is prioritizing form first, and then from there prioritizing peak loads within a given rep range. Now, again, some of the questions here were, so does that hopefully answer a lot of, do I like more sets? No, I don't like adding more sets. Do I like more weight? Yes. Do I like more reps? That can be a short-term form of progression, obviously, right? In theory, there's nothing wrong with that either until an exercise turns into going for a jog, right? So yeah, if you're in the gym for the first time and the first time you ever press dumbbells, you do 10-pound dumbbells for 10, right? Then obviously if you go from 10-pound dumbbells for 10 to 11 to 12 to 13, I mean, if you went all the way up to 30, you're going to get bigger, right? So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with higher rep ranges, but at some point in time, you're just going to start using different energy systems, right? So if you just stick with 10-pound dumbbells from day one and got up to the point where you're doing 1,000 reps, then basically you're just going for a walk on your hands, just going for a walk with dumbbells. So it just turns into different energy systems, right? And that sounds like a joke, but again, if someone is just getting out of a hospital bed for 6 weeks, then walking is extremely anabolic for them. You will put on legit lean tissue, stepping out of a bed and walk, going for steps. And 1 step to 10 steps to 100 steps is going to be a legitimate form of progression to put on more lean tissue. But at some point in time, it's going to be turned into a different adaptive process for different energy systems. And you'll have hit this kind of peak. And then from there, just obviously, if you want to get bigger walking, you're going to have to do something else where it's challenging the muscle with more intramuscular force. So I like rep ranges. So within a short period of time, if you take a weight and you move from that same weight with perfect form for 6 reps up to 15 reps, that can be a great progression model. And then basically you could start over. Generally, I don't go in that broad of ranges, but that is a fine progression there well too. But long term, I don't think reps are a good progression. More exercises, no, I never really think about that as a form of long-term progression. Now, as you're moving from beginner to intermediate to maybe to advanced, yes, you could make the argument where it probably becomes more important to train a muscle's full contractile range. And even that's a little bit debatable. I mean, it seems pretty definitive from in the gym evidence to smart people evidence that training a muscle's full range of motion is important. But again, day one, when you're a beginner, I can think it's completely unnecessary. So that's why people can get away with doing one exercise for a body part for years, maybe when they're a beginner, 1 or 2 exercises. And then when I think you progress further along the journey, I think it becomes more important to train a muscle's full contractile range. So in a short-term model, yes, again, from maybe beginner to that intermediate range, I will add some exercises. But at some point, same thing, that hits a point of diminishing returns or redundancy. It's like I don't need 6 different pressing variations for chest. I can have 1 or 2 that pretty much accomplish the goal of those exercises, and then anything after that is redundant. So no, I don't add exercises over a period of time. And then so the next question here, there was a good question, which I'll tie this in basically with how do I progress? So someone asked here, first off, how do I pick rep ranges? Rep ranges, again, are a lot personal preference. And then I'll talk about how I progress within those rep ranges, which is the next question that both people kind of asked. So rep ranges, I think it's pretty much agreed upon with everyone that you need to have kind of a minimum. So if we're doing 1s and 2s and 3s, maybe better for powerlifting, not ideal for what adaptations we want to have happen for putting on muscle. So I'd say 5 is the minimum. Most of the time I do around 6. Again, nothing really big difference there, just personal coaching preference. But I think basically anywhere from 6 to 20 for most body parts is effective. Again, there's obviously evidence shows that upwards of 30 or 40 or whatever reps could still be effective. But there does come a point of evidence I've seen in the gym, practicality, the fatigue required for that. Like, again, if everyone kind of agrees the last 5 reps of a working set, or the last 5 reps, and again, that's kind of arbitrary as well too, but the reps closest to failure are the effective reps. Like, why the hell would I go through 35 reps to get to those last 5 reps? So realistically, practically speaking, most of the time I think in the gym should be spent between the 6 to 20 rep range. And then a little bit from there is personal preference. Again, yes, for semantic reasons, I think sometimes depending on the implements that you have access to, it makes more sense to be in slightly higher rep ranges for isolation and slightly lower rep ranges for compound. And that just has to do with what's the next weight increment up and what percentage of a total increase is that. So just to clarify that, if I'm looking at my deadlift and I'm doing 400 pounds for 6, adding 5 pounds to the bar is a very small, manageable percentage increase. And that's the important thing. That's kind of where I think this question goes is, how do I manage my progressions over time, realizing that no matter who you are, again, they're coming to a point of diminishing returns. There was some point in time where whatever percentage you could progress week to week, you could progress 5% week to week on exercises. Every single person, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So again, if I'm putting 5 pounds on a 400-pound bar, obviously that's still a relatively small percentage. So even if you're pretty advanced, that's pretty doable to do. But if I'm trying to progress my dumbbell curl from 30 pounds to 35 pounds, that's a much larger percentage increase. So by working in higher rep ranges, and if we kind of look at this tonnage, this total load, again, the total number of basically reps times the load, which in and of itself isn't that important of a metric, not to get confusing, then obviously doing a 5 pound, adjustment from, again, with a 30-pound dumbbell, if I'm working in 5 to 6 compared to 12 to 15, the total tonnage percentage is not as big of an increase. So yes, I think it's fine, to work in slightly lower rep ranges for compound and slightly higher rep ranges for isolation, just because of what most implements people have in the gym, meaning most people only have 5 pound increment options to progress up over time. Now, if you have smaller implements usable for progression, that's my preferred progression model. So if you like training 6 to 8 for everything, compound and isolation, which again can be a little bit personal preference, maybe you find 6 to 8 tends to work better for you, whether that's a real or perceived reality, or you like 10 to 12 better for whatever reason. If you can go the smallest progression of load increment progressions, that's my preferred method. So just staying right within that. And what that translates to is, in dumbbells, instead of trying to jump 5 pounds or stay in these higher rep ranges, either if I'm trying to go from a 30 to a 35, I'd rather go from a 30 to a 31, from a 31 to a 32. And most people say, well, that's a pain in the ass. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but it is what it is. And so either you can buy microplates, and again, don't ask me, I don't have any links for them right now, but if you just Google microplates, microprogression, magnet plates, things like that, they're a little bit of a pain in the butt to find. Some of them that slide on the bar are easy. Some of them with magnets are a little bit tougher. But again, you asked my preferred method. That's my preferred method. And if you watch, that's why on machines that I use, dumbbells that I use, I always have magnet plates on them. Why I always add a pin to stacks and go up 2.5 pounds on a machine stack sometimes, because I think that's a much more sustainable progression model over time, micro progression, as opposed to looking to progress volume or just purely progress reps and sets and that type of thing. So that would be my preferred method. Now, again, realistically, let's say you don't have microplates, you don't want to get microplates. I think the easiest and simplest way is to work from the bottom of a rep range to the top of a rep range, increase the smallest amount possible, and then repeat. So again, come back to our 50-pound dumbbell example. Let's say the rep range, and this is how I write most of my programs. This is why I do it like this, and this is shameless plug. In my app, I have lots of videos going over way more detail, specifically how to progress things over time, giving more weight examples. And this is why this is going so long right now, but hey, it is what it is, trying to give you guys a good answer. I would say, okay, we got 50-pound dumbbells. Right now I can do 6 reps of that. I would like to week progress from 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10. If the given rep range is 6 to 10, once I get 10, I'm going to grab 55s. And then maybe I'm going to start back at 6. And then week to week, try and add a rep, 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 and repeat the process. Now, the problem with that one as well, too, is people get impatient. People don't realize how things change the longer you do this. Where again, someone's gonna be like, man, I've been stuck at the same weight forever. And I'm like, have you really? And it's like, yeah, I've been doing this. I'm like, well, are you getting a little bit further on that next rep? Or is your form a little bit better? Because again, if I look at when I was at heavier weights, I still specifically remember the first time I could, incline press 120-pound dumbbells. And I feel like I was on those for a bajillion years, because literally week to week, I was going from 6 reps to 6.25 reps to 6.5 reps to 6. And oh my gosh, so close, but technically I didn't lock it out. To where, okay, finally I got 7 reps. I would literally take me a month to 6 weeks to progress a rep. And that's not because I did anything wrong or different. It's because I'm getting to a point of diminishing returns. And I have to be more patient when I'm actually seeing what progression is or is not actually occurring. And then that's where form becomes important as well too. So if I feel like, okay, well, I hit the same number of reps, but I had tighter eccentrics, I had better pauses, I can try whatever it is. If you can tighten up form week to week, again, the further along your journey you get, the more important those things tend to be. So again, my preferred method still is micro progression, because it's the smallest progression you can make in load week to week will be more sustainable. But if, again, that's not an option, my next favorite thing is to work from the bottom of a rep range to the top of a rep range and then repeat the process. And then again, the longer you're in this journey, the further along you are, just stay patient within those rep ranges, because most people quit or give, I don't see results anymore. And then again, obviously all this goes back to look at what you're doing outside the gym as well too. Imagine if everything inside the gym is progressive and adaptive, then what do you think needs to occur outside of the gym? So this is the same people that, like I did when I started, I just ate whatever the hell my mom packed in my lunch when I was 14 years old, and whatever, I would just grab out of the cabinet or eat fast food with friends. I didn't think about nutrition at all my first couple years because I didn't care about it. I just wanted to lift weights. But at some point in time, when I really wasn't producing any results or putting on any muscle, I was like, all right, well, maybe I should probably think about this whole protein thing, this whole macro thing. And then lo and behold, start to address and improve outside the gym variables, and they allow inside the gym progression better. So hopefully with that really long thing, I answered all those questions. But if something there is confusing or I missed something, don't hesitate to ask down below. And I can ramble even more when we come back to volume 5. These next ones should be quicker, hopefully. One is basically, how do you manage training with heavy weights and joints longevity? Meaning, do I cycle heavy weights and lighter weights? No. The only thing that I typically cycle, so the first answer, the first two most important ones where most people mess up is, one, perfect your form. Like I said, if your form is a hypothetical 5 out of 10, get it as close to a 10 out of 10 as you can. No one has perfect form, but minimize your orthopedic issues you're going to have just by having good form, minimizing momentum, making sure that you're having your muscle do as much as possible. And then the next part of that is, listen to the obvious. So some people will, and I'm some people, so I'm not judging. I did an exercise, I saw flat barbell bench press. I literally hurt myself for over a period of, I did it for probably 10 years consistently. The last few years of doing it, I probably repeatedly injured my shoulder 4 or 5 times just trying to force it. I can do it with a little bit better form now and get away with it. But I was looking at the obvious, where I was getting some returns from it from a development standpoint, but I basically just kept injuring myself over and over and over. And in spite of the obvious, I just kept doing it and wondering why the same thing kept happening. So that's one of the most obvious things, is there's someone right now watching this that's like, every time I do this exercise, something hurts. Well, let's see if this next time's going to be the good time. It's not. I'm going to give you the secret right now. Next time's going to suck too. So do the obvious too. If your goal is muscle building, you don't have to do any exercise. You don't have to do any exercise exactly the way that you do it. Now, I'm not telling any of you to go and do a barbell bench press like this. Someone's like, oh, someone will take everything and run with it. I'm not saying every single person might not have to touch their chest. You might be half an inch off. That's not the same as saying, oh, Joe said stay in my active range of motion. I've never told anyone to do this because you look like an idiot and you're wasting time. But it does mean, okay, well, this machine feels better than a barbell. Well, great. Almost any machine, if you do it properly and you move from doing a plate to a side to 6 plates a side with perfect form, you're going to be huge. Is your goal to be huge, or is your goal to be a bench presser? Bench press is just one example. So those are the easiest opportunities. First and foremost, perfect your form. Pick exercises that don't hurt. They don't hurt at all. Don't do anything that hurts. Stuff shouldn't hurt. The no pain, no gain thing is not orthopedic. It's not a joint thing. Make your muscles hurt like crazy, but your joints should feel fine. So rotate exercises as needed. Find the best solution for you. Don't feel like you have to do a specific exercise or even a specific range of motion. And then from there, if I'm doing all of that stuff, that comes back to the volume answer before. The only thing I really change in people's programs over time is I do undulate their volume a little bit. So I'll have kind of, where are we at for their minimal amount of volume that they can grow from. And then when I feel like that systemically adds up to, man, we're starting to have these signs of overtraining, I'm not progressing, I'm doing all my recovery stuff good, then I'll take them to a recovery phase instead of whatever people call it, a deload. I never deload. I will devolume. And so all I mean is I might have a period of time for, it could be as short as 2 weeks, could be as long as 6 weeks, depending on the individual, where I will sometimes cut their volume, in a quarter. So literally they're doing 25% of the volume they were before, keeping peak loads relatively high, maybe adjust their proximity to failure a little bit as well too, allow their body to catch up with that systemic tax, so allow them to recover for that period of time, and then repeat the process back on through. And, occasionally, now again, there's a whole lot of exceptions here. If someone's form is garbage, someone comes to me and everything's just complete shit, they don't even feel a muscle anywhere, their joints constantly hurt, then that might be a time when, yes, I don't really think about load at all. Like, let's just get you actually not hurting your joints. Let's get you in some better positions. Let's find some better exercises. And that can happen along your journey as well, too. People can kind of stray off path. So yes, there can be periods of time to allow your body to recover, but it's really just taking a time to improve and not kind of the first step again, just improve form. Or again, if your form is complete garbage, you really shouldn't be focusing on weight much. How would I set up a split if I had 5 days per week and you don't like total body? This is my current split right now. So basically, I like to deprioritize. So whatever your top priority body parts are, I know you like to train things. I think you want to hit each body part twice a week. We'll let go of that, in my opinion, and deprioritize something and prioritize other stuff. That's my favorite way to do it, because generally 5 days a week works well for me from a scheduling standpoint and from a recovery standpoint. So my current split goes push, pull, lower, and then I have an off day, and then I have a push-pull day, so I'm doing some chest in the back, and then I have an arm day. So obviously you can tell from that my priorities are not my lower body, my priorities are upper body, and I'm deprioritizing even delts a little bit. So I have made a choice of what's going to have the biggest impact on my physique. I train those things twice a week. Assuming form is good, this strategy can work pretty well, and I deprioritize some other stuff. One of my favorite, easiest 4-day splits is basically just doing push, pull, lower, take an off day, and then train the priority body part, a bro day for whatever it is, arms, chest, hit it again, obviously where you can recover well from it. And then obviously with the 5th day, you've got an option. Like right now, I want a little bit more frequency for back and chest. So I have movements on those days that aren't super taxing on recovery. I'm not like RDLing 3 times a week or something. If you can recover that, good from you. But for me, it's right now about obviously I have a little bit more frequency for that, and then arms on their own day as well too. So I'm training back and chest twice a week. I'm training arms twice a week. So that's my favorite way to go through, is really deprioritize something, because whatever your strongest body part is, you train it once a week, it'll still grow probably anyway. And if your stuff that doesn't grow as fast, if your form is good, if you can recover from it, some higher frequency in theory, if it equates to more volume, should equate to it growing faster than your deprioritized stuff. Similar question here. Someone asked, is training a muscle group twice a week necessary for optimal muscle growth? Don't grope your muscles. Unless they're your own muscles, then it's fine. That's the only person you're allowed to grope. Have at it, grope away. Love on yourself a little bit. Things just got weird. But for optimal muscle growth, optimal muscle groping will be a separate video. That'll be on my OnlyFans page. Link for that one will be later. But no, nothing's necessary. So I can make the argument, obviously, a lot of people even say, which I think is somewhat true, if volume for the whole week is equated to be the same, so basically you do twice as much volume within one session training a body part once a week, then you do half the volume spread out into 2 different sessions, that it kind of works out almost to be a wash. When it's split over to 2 separate sessions, I think your overall intensity could be higher, more consistently overall that volume, compared to whether you're doing it basically just once a week. But even that, then you have the requirement of recovery. So the issue with training something twice a week or 3 times a week, the higher frequency is you're going to have higher, again, overall intensity, higher loads lifted, better performance, again, when those split sessions are splitting the volume. So again, it really comes down to an individual thing. And I can point, the most important thing too is I can point at individuals producing great results with everything. So everyone looks at this, is this better natty, better enhanced, whatever. Again, I can point to people that are enhanced that have made crazy results with every version. I can point to natty with people that have had crazy results with every version. So the number one most important thing, please write this down, please underline it, please circle it, please dot it, please note it, is do the split you like the best. I still think that is the most important thing for anyone watching this and really concerned. Again, if you don't give a shit about it, yes, if you're a beginner, you should train higher frequency. Maybe you should get more advanced. You should have a little less frequency. That's the only very general trend that I would tend to follow. And then obviously you can make adjustments once you're farther along the journey, like I said, too, to prioritize different body parts. But still, the most important umbrella thing is just train the split that you like, because people really, really neglect enjoyment. I mean, people go into gyms. I've had people be like, I'm a beginner and I'm training full body, but I hate it. And I'm like, that is not the program for you. People all the time say, God, like someone's question here earlier was like, I don't like full bodies, but how else do I train 5 days a week? Well, then you figured out one thing. Don't do full body. If you don't like it, don't do it. Because mindset's important. Performance will directly affect performance. And then performance obviously will dictate what you're actually doing in the progress that you can make. So no, it's not necessary. If you like it, have at it. If you don't like it, you'll be perfectly fine. And I would argue too, if someone's really having a hard time with recovery, then maybe that could be a reason to train things once a week as well too. Again, but even someone will say then, well, if I train things twice a week, you could just have way less volume even within those sessions. And yeah, that's accurate as well too. So if your recovery is bad, just find the way that makes the most sense to have maybe less overall volume, and that's probably the best approach. So hopefully that helps. Someone basically asking, part one, this is a three-part question. If I use full range of motion when lifting, is static stretching necessary for longevity, for staying healthy while lifting? No. Part two, is the claim true that lifting weights shortens the muscle and therefore stretching is necessary? No. Part three, how to stay flexible while staying strong and be as muscular as possible. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Part three, so as you guys have found out, I don't think static stretching is bad. I just don't think static stretching does anything to create any permanent change in anything in your body. Unless it relaxes you. So if you like it because it's relaxing, then that's a good positive change that could have some physical change, obviously, as well, too. Maybe improve recovery, improve sleep, whatever. But it doesn't do anything to change muscle lengths. And the thing that really dictates muscle lengths, or more importantly, muscle lengths you're able to access, most of the time is your brain, aside from having some sort of traumatic soft tissue injury or whatever. So again, I don't think static stretching makes any permanent changes in your brain that would allow you to access more range of motion. So one, yes, training full range of motion within your training is probably one of the most important things you can do for preserving flexibility. But realize there's going to be some ranges of motions and positions you will never access ever in just traditional training. So again, if you guys have followed my stuff for a little bit, that's the main reason I like activations or preps. I know it's a bad term. You're not really technically activating anything, but to prep your body or to go into ranges of motion you normally wouldn't. That's why I like to do stuff at the beginning of my session and at the end of my session, where I go places I might not typically go during my training. So I like to take my GH joint, for example, through full external rotation, through full internal rotation. There we go. What I did right there, actively taking myself through a range of motion that I have available, is probably the best thing that you can do to preserve range of motion. And if you spend time there, potentially train those ranges of motion in some way, shape, or form, that, in my opinion, is by far the best thing you can do to preserve range of motion. I would go as far as to say you'll never lose any range of motion if you go there frequently and stay there. And I would go even a step further. If you train those ranges of motion, that's the best way to expand range of motion, mobility, or flexibility, whatever term you want to look at. So the best thing that you can do to stay healthy, to stay flexible, and to improve flexibility is to actively go through as much range of motion as possible, all the range of motion that you have available in every single joint in your body as frequently as possible, which sounds like a slightly daunting task, and it is a little bit. But again, if you guys have followed my stuff, that's why I like to do things pre-session, post-session, where at least over the course of the week, I'm pretty much always taking my entire body through its full active range of motion at least once. And when I'm really being a good boy and doing my homework, I normally try and do it 2 or 3 times a week. And again, some of the practice that a lot of the stuff I've been doing for a while, I always give credit to functional anatomy seminars. One of their biggest things they have basically I don't remember what they call it, like the daily practice, where if you actually know what you're doing, it only takes maybe 10 minutes to take every single joint in your body through its full articulation, starting with toes, feet, fingers, wrists, elbows, shoulders. And those people, some of them, and I agree too, of everything that you go through, if you go through that certification or courses or take their stuff, they say that's the most powerful tool that they'll give you, which I would agree with 100%. And if you really did that every single day, I mean, I can't imagine the amount of orthopedic issues that would be prevented in the world. You would have way less people that are walking around like this when they're 90 years old, minus, some bone issues. Obviously, degenerative bone diseases is a different thing. Sometimes stuff just falls apart. But yeah, so that's a little bit of a ramble, but that's my favorite way to go about that, is actively going into ranges of motion you have available and training there. What are your thoughts on really slow eccentrics, like 4 to 6 seconds for hypertrophy training? So some of the nerd answer, I could go into eccentrics being more taxing, like more damaging. So they cause more muscle damage. They cause more micro tears and shit like that. And that may have a specific place if that's your goal, where you could intentionally have slower eccentrics. But 95% of people watching this just use a pace that allows you to use your muscles and not momentum. So allows you to am I actually lowering this with my chest, or am I dropping it? Am I just lowering some part or dropping it and bouncing at the bottom? So just find a pace that is actually using the trained muscle, not using gravity, not using momentum. Standardize that and just stick with their pace. So again, with rare exception, I almost never program tempos, not because I think that's bad. That can be a great thing and a great thing for some coaches. For me, and where I think there's the biggest opportunity for most people, is just find something that's standardized and keep it. That being said, if there's coaches that program that at times and they're very good at it, then great. I'm not saying that's bad to do slow eccentrics ever at all, but most people I think will just benefit from standardizing it. Last question. Is there a reason why, this is a great question, is there a reason why bodybuilders with poor ankle mobility don't improve it with stretching exercises? Well, one, again, like I kind of went over, I think stretching exercises are a waste of time. So to purely answer your question, probably because they don't want to waste their time. Just kidding, bodybuilders don't know that stretching isn't good or bad or whatever. I think the main reason that bodybuilders don't do it is because they're lazy. and I'm not picking on bodybuilders, I'm a bodybuilder, everyone's lazy in some way, shape, or form, whether you admit it or not. And you'll have people like bodybuilders that say that they like to work hard and grind and they got work ethic and this and that, which means if they like to do the stuff, they like to do the stuff that they think is hard. So they might like to go in the gym and train till they feel like they're going to puke. They might like eating like a robot. They might like going and getting their soft tissue work done where they lay down and have somebody cup them or jam an elbow on them. And because in their brain, they've accepted, yes, technically someone labels that as hard work. And yes, some of that is hard work. But that's hard work that they like. Where I think part of the definition of work should in and of itself being something, if it's hard, that you don't like doing. And so every single bodybuilder, I've seen a bunch of hard workers that tell me how hard their work ethic is and all this and that. And then I'll give them something that they find tedious or boring or that doesn't post well on Instagram. And lo and behold, that amazing work ethic that I've heard so much about tends to disappear. And that's not picking on anyone. You have people that claim how hard they work, for their job or whatever it is. And then, their relationship is falling apart. And I'm like, well, how much time and effort do you put into stuff with your spouse? Have you ever gone to counseling? Have you ever done this? I'm like, deer in the headlights, someone that's got this multi-billion-dollar business that's an entrepreneur. So again, I'm not picking on anyone, myself included. People have things that they like to work on. And then there's other things where, again, as much as people like to tout their work ethic, you'll find something where it's like, I don't want to do that. That's like real hard work. That's tedious. That's outside of my comfort zone. That's not fun. That doesn't post well. That doesn't whatever well. And so again, that's the main reason I think if a bodybuilder has some glaringly obvious thing like poor ankle mobility or poor whatever, they tend to not do it because it's not the hard work that they like to do. Anyway, that is it. We have done all of the questions. If you haven't already, get down there, ask some questions, like some questions that you want to hear the answers to. And as always, if you found this educational, entertaining, appreciate it, or whatever, please do the YouTube thing, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. The channel is growing, which I'm very appreciative of. And I appreciate everyone that helps the channel keep growing, that interacts, comments, and does all that stuff. So until the next one, guys, appreciate you. Later.